Okay, Chloe, it is absolutely lovely to have you on today's podcast episode.
Hello, thank you for inviting me along.
More than welcome. Now, before we get started in talking all things email counselling, maybe it would be really good to hear a little bit about maybe yourself and how you ended up doing what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So I am a counsellor in private practice. I qualified in 2016 and I set my private practice up initially in Brighton. I was working for many years in person sessions, like most of us were pre-pandemic. And I actually did start to wonder about online counselling around 2017, 2018, a couple of years after qualifying.
Mhm.
And most of my peers were like, oh, online counselling, that's not really very proper. I mean,
Mhm.
it's strange now, isn't it? Because 2020, everybody had to go online, and it's quite unusual to find a counsellor who is not working in any kind of capacity of online. So I started looking into that and trying it out as a client and video sessions, and I also tried out email sessions.
Mhm.
And was like, wow, I didn't even know that was a thing. And I was really skeptical actually about it, and I wasn't sure about the writing side of things, but it worked really well for me, which led me to do some specialist training and working online included email counselling, which is something I'm really passionate about now. End of 2019-ish, very early 2020, I decided to relocate back to Scotland. As you can hear from my accent, I'm Scottish. I'd been living really far away. I'd been down in Brighton since I went to uni as my undergraduate, so I've been there a long time. Um, and I was like, I don't want to have to restart my whole practice doing in person. I actually really like working online, like video calls, and I really like the email counselling side of things as well too. So I was like, I'm going to put it all 100% online. And my counselling peers were like, are you going to get enough work? This is crazy. Really? Like, oh, once you get there, you're going to hire rooms, all of this. And of course, March came and the first lockdown, and everybody's moving online. And asking me, oh God, oh, and it was totally unprepared for it. And so in a way, it kind of went in my favor. Obviously, COVID and the pandemic, absolutely horrible. But from a business point of view, I was kind of ready. I was already thinking that future focus. It just, even no, none of us knew the pandemic was around the corner. Of course we didn't. And it's sad that it took a pandemic for people to start thinking about future focused ways of working with clients. But I just it just always felt like that felt a more natural way for clients to be working. And then throughout the pandemic and lockdowns, email counselling became more and more popular in my practice. And I think mostly because people were finding it hard to get privacy because we're in lockdown. If they have families, partners, kids around them, even just going into a spare room or something, like worrying about being overheard, probably wanting to talk about the people they live with because I'm driving them mad with how it was. So just being able to have that quiet space, be able to write at a time that suited them, and not worry about somebody overhearing what they're going to say. Yeah, I just started to develop more and more working email counselling, and counselors started to ask me about this work. And it just seemed like there was a real need for some specialist training.
And isn't it amazing that, I mean, unfortunate that it took the pandemic for
Hmm.
that to happen, but isn't it amazing all the different ways now in which we can work with clients and very much that our services can really tailor to clients' needs so much more. And pre-pandemic, you're right, it was very much that it was mostly face to face or people had to find someone in the local area. But how we can now, that can be translated into, I can work with someone who is literally miles away but they are a really good fit therapist for me.
Yeah,
It's brilliant the way it's kind of diversified how we work with clients.
absolutely. There's so much more choice now. And if I look at myself, when I look for a therapist, not being restricted to my hometown, it's just like and thinking, oh, what if I bump into them in Tesco's? And it's just you can pick somebody, purposely pick someone that you know is hundreds of miles away, but actually maybe suits you a lot better. There's more choice.
Absolutely. How did you even know? Because I've just seen more things popping up about email counselling in more recent kind of months. And how did you first know? Because that was pre-COVID. That was quite a while ago that you first
Mhm.
kind of came across it. How did
Yeah.
you become aware that email counselling was even a thing?
I was working in a charity, like alongside my private practice, and one of my colleagues there was also a counsellor who had not that long qualified and was had just completed or just about to, I can't remember which way around, done some online counselling training, and she was telling me about it. And
Mm.
I just assumed, oh, well, it's going to be like Skype or something in those days, like it's going to be video sessions. And she started talking about doing it writing, like doing email. And I was really skeptical, and I was thinking, that doesn't sound very proper. Like, what kind of course have you found? Because I've never heard of it. I was really, and I share this quite openly nowadays, actually now, because I think it's helpful to think about that stigma, because I think it's quite common when people hear about it, especially when they've just come out of training and they're kind of in the old school kind of, the way that they've been kind of taught what counselling is, and not thinking about all the different alternatives.
Mhm.
I was really skeptical, and I was like, how can that work? It just sounded a mess, and like it's not going to be properly therapeutic. I thought I thought it'd be a good idea to try it as a client, even though I was still a bit skeptical. But I thought, well, I was curious. I was skeptical, but also curious. And trying it as a client was really what shifted things for me, because I found a really professional counselor who'd done training in email counseling and really knew her stuff. And oh, wow, the emails I got back were really good, and really there was something about the depth, actually. I remember there were certain topics that I'd felt quite awkward or embarrassed around talking about. There's often things that we find hard to say out loud, and I just felt like I actually got to the point more. There was less waffle, because
Yeah.
such a talker.
While you're describing that, my mind reflected back in the day when I was first starting and was volunteering. I was volunteering in Childline, and back then a lot of what they offered was sort of text and message
Mhm.
based. And I was thinking, like, for very young people, that was maybe a preferred form of communication.
Mhm.
And so I was thinking, like, what type of people, what type of populations might actually
Mhm.
email counselling be, a much better option perhaps for.
Yeah, definitely younger clients. It does suit very well. I get lots of inquiries from people who are more Gen Z, I guess,
Mhm.
where they've grown up with the internet, with phones in their pockets, and they have they've not talked on landlines. They don't speak to their friends. They might send a voice note possibly,
Mm.
but it's really mostly writing messages back and forward. Um, and that's just the way that they've grown up communicating. So to suddenly think about speaking and opening up by speaking, it just doesn't make sense. Obviously, we all speak, and there's nothing wrong with speaking. But when it comes to being talking to a therapist, it makes sense to match the way that they're already communicating, and talking about something really vulnerable and their emotions. I think that email counseling works really well, not only for young people, but for any age, really. It works really well for people who are first time clients, who are particularly anxious. They're more likely to be more anxious because they've never spoken up about this stuff before. They don't really know how counseling works. It works really well for people who need flexibility in their life. They might be parents, carers, maybe they do lots of shift work. They can't commit to 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. It's just not realistic. And it means that they've got to find a counsellor who does evenings or who can do ad hoc, and that might not always be possible with what they're looking for too.
Mhm.
Neurodivergent clients, can work really well for. Many people who might want or need more time to process, to think about what they want to say. It's really difficult when a counsellor asks us, "Oh, how does that make you feel?" Or "What are you feeling right now?" Or "What's going on in your head?" And for so many of us, it's like, I don't know. You just need a bit of time. Or folks who are perimenopausal or menopausal, and you're just like, I can't even think of the words. I don't even know where I'm going with this. And just time just flies away. And then before you know it, there's time up. But being able to sit and think and be like, okay, what do I really want to write here? What do I want to explore? It so basically it can work for most people.
For lots of people, and just you're saying that, and I'm thinking, well, God, I like that. I would really like that because I'm somebody that if somebody's trying to phone me, I'll watch my phone ring.
Mm.
Like, I have blocks or I'm making phone calls and
Yeah.
face interactions, and I'm much more of a text or maybe a voice note person as well. So we all do have preferences, don't we, over how
Mhm.
we communicate and what we're comfortable with, and maybe what we're comfortable sharing and expressing, depending on maybe the format it's in as well. So it's amazing that email counseling is just there as another option for
Mhm.
people that could really be a fantastic option for people. On a real practical note, where you're talking there about email counseling offers so much more flexibility. I'm imagining, how do you set that up in terms of contracting for frequency of
Mm.
communication, or like how quickly you get back if an email comes through, out of hours? Like, how do you just on a practical level manage that?
Oh, that is such an important question. And I think that's where a lot of people can go wrong, or can assume that things are going to go wrong. Because if, like with any way of counselling, if we haven't properly contracted things and made things very clear and got those boundaries in place, it can just be a mess.
Mhm.
Particularly with this way of working, where there could be more misunderstandings and there could be more kind of difficulties around practicalities. So I agree with clients, like set a set day and time that they would send their email by. They can send it before if they want to, that's absolutely fine, but they've got a day and time that they send it to me by. And then I agree a day and time that I'm going to send my reply by. And there's an intentional space of time between those two emails because of the way that it works. Therapeutically, that time delay is really important. And I think that having that in place is essential, because then the client knows, okay, I know when I'm going to hear back from my counselor, rather than what could be a real mess if we just asked our clients, oh, just send me an email when you're ready, and then they send it on like Saturday morning or something, and then maybe you've taken Monday off but you haven't told them, and then they don't hear and it's just like they don't really know when they're going to hear back from you, and they don't know whether it's reached you. And so having that contracted, when they're going to send it, and the regularity, I usually do it weekly, because that really works really well in my practice and the clients that I work with in general. With any clients that I work with, I find if there's longer gaps of time, I find it can get quite messy, particularly in email counselling, because people forget of like when they're meant to send it, and so much time has passed when they've read my reply type thing.
Okay. And is there anything that you need in particular in terms of the type of email provider you use, or that doesn't, like, most?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It needs to be a really secure
Mhm.
email system
Mhm.
that you use as a counselor, but
Mhm.
also your client needs to use that too. So
Mhm.
and this is something I explore in the course that I run, that it's really important that we're checking out the systems that are going to be secure enough and going to work well. We can't just randomly reply to their Hotmail account or something that they've got, that's these kind of systems that have adverts at the side, and they've got they're being scanned all the time. I mean, they're okay to use for a personal use, arguably, I guess, but certainly not for a professional therapeutic an email session. And having
Mhm.
it separate from their general email account is also really helpful, because it means that their partner or anyone else won't even know about that account. So it's not like if there was any kind of issue of somebody reading it, If it was like on another device or something like that, having it in that really secure portal is important.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that you're just mentioning that are then just, I suppose, highlighting how these are all things that we need to be aware of, like when we're working on video with people, aware of all of these implications, but it's just different, isn't it? There are different
Hmm.
things you have to consider, making sure that it's a GDPR compliant
Yeah.
email provider, that it's secure, how to
Hmm.
prevent things going into
Absolutely.
folders, all of that kind of stuff. And you just mentioned these are all the things you cover in your course, because I imagine it could be very easy to have this impression perhaps that this might be a very straightforward and simple thing to do.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
what you're just saying and highlighting is there's lots of things we need to consider. So what would be those things in your the course, the training that you offer? What would be the kind of things you focus on?
Yeah, that's what really worries me, isn't it? Was when people hear of it and think, oh, I'll just do a bit of that. Or I do it between my sessions or something like that, and you're like, oh God, I don't even realize that, and we don't know with it with everything, do we? And so yeah, some of the common pitfalls are the things that I would cover on that I cover on the specialist training that I run is stuff around assessments, how do we assess our clients are right for the for this type of work, our contracting, our boundaries, lots of stuff around practicalities that we were talking about earlier, and security and insurance. I mean, an insurance provider wouldn't cover you if you haven't done training in this way of working. And so if you're just doing it without it being listed in your training, then that's going to get you into some really tricky waters if there's ever any problems in future. So I think sometimes counselors can just end up picking up other things that they do and not realizing that it needs to be in our part of our insurance. And there's lots of on the course, there's lots of practice, lots of case studies, and lots of opportunities to learn. I've got a step-by-step guide of what to do when you get that client email. Um, and so you know the steps to how to even start a reply and how to do a therapeutic response. And there's lots of fictional client emails to practice on. There's things that without the training that I think people could get into some really muddy waters around knowing what to look for in the words, how to kind of read between the words, how
Mm.
to how to manage challenge and rupture and repair, and pick up some of the things that they might be trying to say through some of the words and the emotive words that they might be saying, or the order of the things that they're saying, or the time that they might have sent the email. There's just or how many words they might have written, so many different things that could kind of tell us that we
Mm.
explore.
Yeah, because essentially it's like we're cutting off some senses.
Hmm.
We're cutting off visually that
Yeah,
them in the room, or we're cutting off them being on video and
yeah,
body language and facial expressions. So almost your sense of reading between the lines, like you
yeah.
said, that must be really honed in on
Mhm.
even more. And if that's something you're not aware of or that you've had the training on, that you could really end up in some tricky situations.
Yeah. I mean, I think some people assume, and I probably did too, when I was skeptical around email counseling, oh, well, you haven't got the facial expressions, you haven't got the body language, you haven't got that sense being in the room, whatever even that even means that people used to talk about, but that we have to have that. When actually, when people write, it frees up so much of that,
Mm.
and people are more disinhibited, so much more. So they're often much more able to be much more open and to really share what they need to say, which can be pros and cons because sometimes people can start opening up too much before they're too ready. So it's kind of getting that balance as well. But it means that the clients can really talk about what they really need to and not avoid things quite so much. But the ability to be able to pick up on what the client is saying without that tone of voice and
Mm.
body language is something that is possible. We can, there is a, that the style they're writing, has it changed from last week? Have they suddenly used the capital letters, or is there certain words they're repeating? There's so many things that they might be doing that we're looking out for as an email counselor that we can sense. I mean, and sometimes we'll get it wrong, and we need to be open to that
Mhm.
because we might pick up a tone that's not right, and it's learning those skills to be able to check in about something, be ready for the fact that we might have got it wrong, just like we might do if we're speaking on a video call or in person. We still might be getting it wrong just because they're the classic one, crossed their arms. Oh, it means that they're in a bad mood with us or they really don't want to open up. No, it doesn't. It doesn't necessarily mean that. Yes, it might do, but we don't always know what
Yeah.
our we can't always read their body language anyway, is what I'm trying
Might
to
be
say.
comfortable. That might just be comfortable.
Exactly. It might be uncomfortable, exactly.
I'm curious, just from a marketing angle, I guess, are people finding the likes of yourself because they're specifically looking for an email counselor, or is it that they're finding you and then going, oh, and seeing that you offer this and that really works for them?
A bit of both.
Mhm.
In the early days when I wasn't as known for doing email counselling or didn't, or not many people maybe heard of it, or it wasn't maybe as clear on my website, they were coming because I work with trans and non-binary and queer clients. Gender and sexual diversity is like a big part of my practice. That was the reason, and they were looking at the options of how would you like to work. And nowadays, I still get people coming definitely for that reason, but the way that they want to work, it can definitely be immediately like I want to work by email. But some people don't, and some people want a mixture. And it's
Mhm.
possible to have a mixture, and that can work really well. Some people might want to try a little bit, start with video calls and see how that is, and then they might be like, "Oh, should we try email?" Because it might be something that I can sense that they are finding really hard to talk about in detail. Sex is a big one, and like people can feel really embarrassed and they worry about going into too much detail. So we might be like, "Okay, should we try an email session?" And it might just be they do it for a few weeks and then we switch back, or they might be like, "Actually, this is better for me." Or they
Mhm.
might start an email and be like, actually, I would quite like to speak to you now. I feel more ready. I feel less anxious. I think what's really important for me in my job is that I'd never think of either as being like a hierarchy, as one is better than the other.
Mhm.
Because I think that can be problematic if we're thinking like, oh, we're just doing email for now to then get them on to be able to speak to me. Like that can be really problematic, or vice versa even. So
Mhm.
it's about kind of giving them that agency to how do they want to work, but also opening up the option, would they like to try a different way? Because I do offer different ways, and that might help.
I love the kind of the creativity and the flexibility
Mm.
of that as well. So I do, so my work is online, but there can be like voice note support in between. So I
Mm.
love when therapists are finding more creative ways to work with individuals. So it's lovely that they could potentially even be blending both,
Yeah.
if they wanted to. I think it's fabulous. Something that I'm really interested in and I like to try and explore and talk about as much as I can on this podcast is about building a business,
Mhm.
and that it can be quite challenging to rely on one-to-one only for building up a sustainable private practice. And so I do offer CPD programs for therapists that then want to go on and create workshops and other offers. So I'm really interested in hearing a little bit about how you kind of got to this point. Like you've gone down,
Mhm.
you did the training, you started specializing in the email counseling, that you've
Yeah.
seen an opportunity here
Yeah.
and you've created a whole new a few revenue streams for
Mhm.
yourself, which is
Yeah.
amazing, but it's also doing something brilliant for other counselors. And I love when I see counselors doing that, creating a new revenue for themselves, but also potentially that it's supporting other therapists as well. So how did you get to that point of going, there's something in this, there's an opportunity in this?
Oh, thank you. That's really lovely to hear. I think, and as I was mentioned to you before we hit record, something that really attracted me to your podcast is I like the way that you talk really positively about money and reviewing our fees. For
Mhm.
me, that was a big part of my journey. I used to offer lots of concessions and sliding scales and work with loads of clients, and it was really hard to be able to do anything else apart from my one-to-one client work, which in the beginning I didn't mind, I didn't really think of any different about it. That's kind of what my peers were doing. But then as I started to think more about it and reflect on it, listening to things like yourself and podcasts and things like this to start to reflect on my fees, it really helped me take a step back and think, what actually do I want to be doing here? I started being contacted. I think it was actually my placement that I'd done when I was training to run a training course in working with LGBTQ plus clients. Because I was really interested in that right from the start, and I niched right down straight away when I started my private practice. And so I thought, okay, yeah, put something together, and I absolutely loved it, and it went really well. And I was like, actually, I've done a lot of training over my career. It's kind of always been part of pretty much all of my jobs for like 20 years now. And so I started doing more and more trainings around working with queer clients. Some people might know me for this work I did around advocacy around pronouns. I did a lot of work around that for many years. So the training side started to really build, and I was like, I can't work with so many one-to-one clients. And then so I started to put my fees up because I was like, actually, I want to work with less people. And then I got more and more confident and more known. And I was like, actually, it's okay. I can charge more. So now I do actually charge quite high fees, but I think they're fair, and they're suitable, and people are very happy to pay what they pay. And what it means is it means that I can work with a small caseload and offer what I think is a really quality service because I have time in my supervision to talk about them as much as I need to. But it also frees up my week to do fun, not the client work's not fun, but do you know what I mean? It's like fun other things that kind of use a different amount of energy. And doing training was something that I was really enjoying doing. And then I starting to offer email counselling training was something that just felt like a natural pivot because I was already quite known by counselors for offering training. And this was something that people were asking me about and wanting to know more about. So I thought, oh, I'll just do some short courses. And they got really popular. I was like, actually, there's more of a need here. And I was like, there's not really anything out there. There's online counselling courses. Some of them have been around since pre-pandemic, so they're quite, how can I say, they've got much more of a focus on video sessions, which not necessarily people are really looking for these days. They still can be incredibly helpful, and there's still a lot that we can learn from that, and they're really important. But the email counselling side of things is often kind of a short add-on from people I speak to who've done kind of some kind of online courses in the past. And I was like, actually, I think people are looking for email counseling training specifically. And I am so passionate about it. And I also get so frustrated when I see or hear about people just trying to do it when they haven't done any training and thinking, oh no, they're gonna get lots of problems themselves, but also with the clients too. So it just made sense. But yeah, having that space and time in my week because of the way that I manage my business in terms of my fees just has helped. And it means that I can sort of give something back to the community. And we need more people like whoever is listening here. Think to yourself, is there something, you're really passionate about that you really love that or a topic that you have a lot of knowledge about, but maybe you just don't have any space because you're so exhausted by just seeing loads and loads of clients. To be able to bring that into the profession and help more clients, sorry, more counselors be more proficient, which will help more clients, it just makes sense. I mean, not
Totally.
everyone will want to do that, of course, and that's totally fine. We don't have to all do trainings or other kinds of businesses. But if you have an inkling, that's sort of my journey and kind of how I was able to do it.
Yeah, sometimes that can come down to a confidence thing, but
Yeah.
so that, like, how amazing that would be. There are two things that were coming up. There is one, like, there need to be more conversations like this about money because I think so often therapists have this natural tendency to just do what everybody else is doing, to
Yeah.
follow the norm. So everybody ends up charging the same fee. And then
Mhm.
maybe they're hanging out in the same counselling groups, and then we're seeing this same narrative. And I see a lot of narrative about people just can't afford therapy and people
Yeah.
can't with these fees and people can't afford this. But there are plenty of therapists out there who are charging perhaps higher fees and have no issues in attracting clients. There are plenty of clients out there. It really comes down to how we then are communicating what we do, and that perhaps we have something that is really unique to be able to offer.
Absolutely. And if you have got a niche and you've got lots of experience and you're specializing something, it makes sense.
Mhm.
And I think often clients can actually be put off if your fee's really low.
Mm.
Because they're like, well, you don't stand out, how you're just like everybody else. And sadly, that's the reality. And that's kind of just how money works. And it took me a long time. Well, I think I kind of knew that, but to remind myself of that, actually it's okay. And if they're who you want to attract, it's okay to try that. And that will, it costs a lot of money and time to train.
Mhm.
Most people are very much undercharging,
Yeah.
considering how much value a client gets from that session. It's huge. It's so important.
How much you say, how much it's cost for them to do the training, and they tend to be persistent CPD takers and taking qualification after qualification. I remember once sitting down and actually writing out how much I'd invested over the last 13 years. It's shocking. It's
Yeah.
really shocking. And I think if more people actually did that, that they sat down and thought about the time, the energy, the financial investment, your £50 really cutting it, and that there are lots of different ways in which you can give back in value. You've just mentioned you're giving back in the way that you've now created potential other revenue sources for other counselors and therapists as well.
Yeah.
Different ways in which you can provide value or give back that doesn't have to be about always being affordable and accessible. And I think like the other thing that therapists often forget is that your client has choice.
Yes, they do.
Choice
Yeah.
to say, sorry, you're too expensive for me, or they have the choice to say, you're actually the perfect therapist for me, and let's work together.
Yeah, and the people who've done training with me have found because they can now offer email counselling, they are able to work with more clients because if they, for example, they have a client contacting them are like, oh, I can only do Tuesday evenings and their Tuesday evening is full, they have to say bye or you can wait. But with email counselling, it's like, okay, if you've got if the counsellor has a slot still to take on another, if they're prepared to take another client on, they've got space, but it's not on the Tuesday evening, it's on the Friday morning. They're like, doesn't matter. It's email. It doesn't have to be a set day and time because we work out together when we're going to, when they write their email in the time that works for them, and we write our email back in the time that works for us. And it's not that set scheduled time. So there's not that going backwards and forwards on emails. Oh, what kind of time can you do? I can't do that time. And then it's like, oh, they really want to work with you, but they
Mhm.
haven't got, they can't make the time work. And then
Mhm.
it's like, well, they can't work with them anymore. The
Mhm.
email we can. So we lose less income working in this way. And the
Mhm.
clients are less disappointed because if you're saying you've got spaces for new clients, you got spaces for new clients. If a client contacts me and they really want to do video call, but we can't make the time work, I can still work with them and be like, okay, would you like to try email counseling? It may not be something they'd thought of or that they even realized I did, but they might be so keen to work with me and they don't want to wait that they might want to try it.
Mhm.
They don't have to go off and find somebody else.
That's brilliant. I love it. I love everything you're saying. Really good. And I think, yeah, some of the points that you've mentioned there, I do hope that people kind of take away and think about that we're maybe sitting on an idea, we're sitting on like a specialist area of knowledge, a skill, like something that we have. And then imposter syndrome comes in and the story starts that, oh, nobody will be interested in that, or I can't do that. And actually, you can. You can, even if you need to get the support, that you can find ways to create these opportunities, and that's what I really love to see like individuals like yourself do, and I think it's fabulous. On the topic of your course, which
Mhm.
you have created, I think you mentioned before that it only runs so many times a year, is that right?
It at the time of recording, it's yeah, we have one intake a year. So in the autumn, each year. That probably won't change in future, but possibly will. So good to just to check if you're listening to this way into the future. Yeah, at the moment and intake in the autumn. Applications for 2025 open middle of September for a January start. So I'll be taking applications in the autumn and interviewing people and offering places through the autumn so that people are ready to start in the new cohort altogether in January.
That sounds fantastic and brilliant to hear. Like you're interviewing people, and it sounds like you're being really thorough as well, making sure that it's right for people
It's
as well.
really important. Yeah, it's really important. And also important to note that they need to be qualified counsellors.
Mhm.
This is a very different way of working, and I think it's really important that people have a grounding of their initial training first.
Mhm.
So it's not suitable for trainees. So sorry to disappoint if anyone's listening and thinking that, but there's always next year. So it need to be a qualified counsellor to come in and join our course. What was I going to say? My brain's just gone.
No, maybe it'll come back. It'll come back. So before we wrap up, can you just let people know where they can find you? And in particular, if they're interested in doing your email counselling course, which sounds fabulous, where can they find the
I've
details?
remembered what it was. Yeah, so they can find me on emailcounselingacademy.com is the website. All the information is on my website there, and I'm also on LinkedIn talking about email counselling. My name, Chloe Foster. But the thing that I almost forgot to say was the fact that there is a free quiz, which you'll find on my website, and maybe the link will be under in the show notes of this, I'm not sure. So it's basically a quiz for counsellors who are thinking, is email counselling right for you? So there's multiple choice questions that take you through to work out whether or not this way of working would work for you personally as a counsellor, but whether or not also it would work for your type of clients that you like working with. So that will help you before you even think about whether or not you want to put an application in, but to work out, because that will give you your score, and you will see clearly to whether or not this is going to suit you. And if there's things that are like, oh, I hadn't really thought about that, maybe it wouldn't really work for me. Or, oh, yeah, actually, I would do like that. People have found that really helpful to as a sort of a screening type thing. I'm not going to
Brilliant.
ask you for your score. It's not like that thing. It's more a fun thing to check and be like, oh, if you're curious.
Yeah, that's good. That sounds like a great idea. Thank you so much for talking to me today. I've really enjoyed the conversation. And yeah, it's given a whole new insight and perspective, maybe into a whole new way of working that therapists haven't thought about before. And I think things are evolving and changing so much, aren't they? Especially post-COVID, that thinking about these ways of working is a great idea. So thank you so much for joining me and sharing it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.